Bless you. Thank you for all for being here. I'm sorry to be a bit slow on the get-go. Hello, folks. Rose, Charles, David, and Robert Reed, and Renee Wadlow, who I think is in the south of France. Okay. Hi. How's everybody?
Fine, thank you.
Very good.
Glad to hear it. Oh, you have a new painting in the background of the Port of Halifax, Robert.
That's right.
Where you are now? You're in Halifax?
That's right.
Okay. I didn't know where you lived. Okay. Now here comes Charles Nantel. I haven't seen Charles in ages. Charles is my French interpreter friend. So, who's got something new going on?
In New York City, which is where I am right now, visiting my daughter and her family.
Oh,
I have been reading over the Ryerson University task force on the name change. I just wondered how everybody feels about that trend in society generally. Ryerson University is changing its name, as you know.
Do you know what it's going to be called?
No. There's some suggestion that an indigenous name be chosen, but the statute is being removed of Egerton Ryerson, and the name of the university evidently will be changed, although there's some talk about an injunction being brought forward to stop it at the provincial level. That has to go through the Ontario government somehow in order for that to change. At least that's what I'm led to believe. But it's been fascinating reading, I must say.
Well, have you found, are they presenting much evidence in this whole process as to whether or not he deserves to be disgraced suddenly?
Well, I'm of the opinion that he does not. I think that certainly his contribution to public education, or the establishment of it, beginning in Canada or in Ontario and ultimately throughout the country. He worked closely with the Ojibwe, who wanted a lot of the schools that subsequently morphed into something quite awful, like the residential schools that are so topical right now. But in the early years, when Ryerson was at his most active, he worked in collaboration with the leaders of the Mississauga First Nations people and the Ojibways in establishing these schools. They perhaps didn't evolve in quite the way they should have, obviously, but I do not believe that he should be removed entirely from the commemoration of having Ryerson University named after him. I would opt for keeping the name changed. And of course, there's also the problems of knowing and recognizing the university around the world. There's one friend of mine who teaches there, who's traveled all over as an urban designer, and feels that the value of a lot of the degrees that have already been received by students, and as well as establishing the name of Ryerson's contributions in his field, which happens to be urban design, are going to be diminished. What do the rest of you think?
Charles Tauber is in Vukovar, Croatia. David Miller, I suppose, is in Montreal, aren't you, David? We know that Robert Reed is in Halifax, and Fenton, I presume, is here in Toronto at home, and Alan Haber must be in Ann Arbor. Is that right? Now we have Adam Wynn, who's for some reason not showing his face yet. And Renee Wadlow is, I guess, in this little town in the south of France, but we see his name, but I don't see his face. And then Charles Nantel. Again, I hope you can turn on your camera, Charles. And here we have a newcomer, Senator Atulojan. Senator Aya Atulojan.
Yes, I'm representing Senator Selma Atulojan. She's a senator, and I just thought I'd join in to get any information you can pass on. I'm happy to forward on to her.
Good. Now,
And my
tell me
name
again,
is Aya.
your name is
Aya.
Aya. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
So, and you're representing, tell me again the name of your senator?
Senator Selma Atulojan.
Atulojan. And she is a Canadian senator? Is that it?
Yes, she is. She sits in the Senate. She was appointed in 2010. She is part of the Conservative Senate group, which tends to be nonpartisan, but we're working on that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Welcome, and give her our good wishes.
you.
Maybe you'd, why don't we, since you're, one of the newcomers, I mean, the newest newcomer, because all of these people I think have been here at once, except Renee and Charles. Why don't you take a minute and talk about the senator and her interests? Because I'm sorry to say I didn't recognize her name. It's good of you to be here.
Thank you. Well, Senator Selma Atulojan is known for her advocacy of human rights around the world. Currently, the Afghanistan crisis is it's at the forefront. She also advocates for women equality and women and girls' rights. She used to sit and plans to sit again once the Senate resumes as the chair of the Standing Senate Human Rights Committee. She also sits on the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. So she's very involved in those two areas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get her attention personally towards the environment crisis and the climate change crisis. So this particular webinar caught my attention.
Mm-hmm.
Conservative senators are not focusing enough on climate change and the environment. So I'm hoping to educate them on that and what needs to be done in that. And also I could see on the agenda, you were planning to talk about militarism and the nuclear weapons. She is a critic of the Bill S2 bill that's, where is it? She's the critic of the chemical weapons bill that's called Bill S2, an act to amend the Chemical Weapons Convention. So I was hoping to see if anything was going to be talked about nuclear weapons, because she plans to be the critic on this bill again once it gets reintroduced in the Senate, because we have to start over. It fell off the order paper last Parliament. So,
oh my goodness! So well, now you are. I'm delighted that you can speak to that, because is there anybody else here who knows about that bill? I am totally unaware of it, and I'm embarrassed to say that. What is the bill, and what what's it all about? It's completely foreign to me.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't prepared to speak, but I'll give you a briefing.
Okay.
So it works to align our act, the Chemical Weapons Convention Act. So it's looking to amend it. So it's aligned with, it has to do with the Schedule A. I'm just pulling up my notes. So there's no discrepancy with the current United Nations Chemical Weapons Convention. So it's looking to align itself with what the UN has in place. Right now, it's not consistent. So it's a good bill. We're hoping to present it again next in November or even December.
Oh my! Well, please keep me posted on that. Don't wait until there's another global town hall, because this is the sort of thing I should be familiar with, and I'm really not. Is there anybody else here who could help clarify what we're trying to discuss here? None of you know about that. Well, Okay, here we go. David Miller. David, please speak to this if you understand what it's about. You have to unmute yourself.
I don't have a lot of expertise here. I just pulled up the Senate's description of this bill, which Senator Atulojan says is going to be reintroduced. So presumably it'll be similar to the previous.
Okay, but we don't know many of the details about that bill, right?
The main part of the bill is to add Novichok to the list of banned chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
It's a step that was agreed to by countries that are parties to the Chemical Weapons Convention, CWC.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to ban Novichok. That was widely used. It was obviously used in Russia, and partly in the United States and China.
Uh-huh.
So the CWC, it came into force in 1997. Canada has adhered to the convention since it was founded, but now there's 193 states that they declare that they will adhere to the convention. They amended their act to include Novichok, but Canada has not. So we want to make that amendment to include Novichok as a chemical weapon.
Thank you. Okay, that does ring bells with me, because in fact I do think we had a conversation, maybe not on the Global Town Hall, but elsewhere, something else I was involved with, in which there was a conversation about that on and the speaker kind of believed or assumed or argued that it's already banned without having to be named, that anything that has the effects that Novichok has would certainly be prohibited, already for sure. But I'm not arguing against the idea of explicitly adding it. It sounds to me like a very smart thing to add it, because clearly the Russians I think probably the Russians are the only people who even have the stuff. They invented it, didn't they? And they used it,
yes.
In against that man and his daughter in England, and then also against Alexei Navalny, right?
Correct. Yes, Sergei and Yulia Skripal in Salisbury, UK. That was in March of 2018.
And it's so toxic that they threw away the vial in the weeds or something, and somebody picked it up and it killed them. It was a woman who, if I'm not mistaken, a woman just walking out in the park or something, picked up this little vial with the chemical that had contained the chemical, and I believe she died of it.
You are correct. Yes, it was put in a dumpster and someone picked it up and they ended up dying.
Okay.
Actually, I can't confirm if they ended up dying or not. I don't recall the exact details, but they were definitely hospitalized. If it ended up causing their death, I can't recall.
Okay.
But that it is extremely toxic to the touch.
Okay, Charles Tauber, you have something to say on the subject.
No, not on that subject. So if you want to continue with that, please go on.
Okay.
But I have to leave. I'll have to.
You have to leave soon. Okay, well, we'll get to you in a minute. Adam, you have your hand up. Adam Wynn.
I apologize, I'm not on camera. I'm having some issues with my internet connection today. But my question to the Senator's assistants, does this ban include the products that are used to produce Novichok, or just the completed product? Because there's several, from my understanding, there might be 2 or 3 different chemicals that go into its production. Are those also prohibited, or is it just the final product that's prohibited?
I'm trying to get a clear answer for you. Right now, it says the agents used to produce Novichok. So I would think the products that are used, so I can't give you a confirmed answer. As I said, I wasn't prepared to speak today, but I'm happy to get back to you on that one, whether it's, because you said Novichok there's different variants of it. I would presume they are all would be banned because they're all seen as poisonous, and they should be part of the convention, the CWC, the Chemical Weapons Convention. But to get a confirmed answer, I'm happy to get back to you next time.
Well, it's also possible that sometimes you can take two perfectly innocent compounds or chemicals, and they're fine separately. You mix them together, and that's where you get your trouble. But so it's possible that you could have something, terribly toxic made out of two or three things that are perfectly all right alone. That's, as you can see how sophisticated I am in chemistry. Very, very smart from high school. But I know that much. I'm pretty sure that much is true.
You're saying that your senator is in favor of this bill to include that?
The sponsor of the bill is Senator Mary Coyle. So it's her bill. Senator Selma Atulojan is the critic of the bill. So our job is to analyze it, point out any concerns that we may have with it. At this time, we don't have major concerns. But we always tend to criticize a bill after it's been studied in the committee. It hasn't even gone to the committee stage where they do a thorough study and come back with their recommendations. So it's still in the very early stage. At this time, we are in support of it because there's no harm in banning such toxic weapons.
Yes, the bill would look to be what they call a no-brainer to me. But I guess it's always good to look at the details to make sure. But certainly, I would think it would be a no-brainer just to do it.
By the way, I noticed something, and maybe you can help clarify for me. Yesterday, I was told that Alexei Navalny has been awarded or will be awarded the Sakharov Prize, which is created by the European Parliament. But not more than 2 weeks ago, if that, there was an announcement that John Polanyi is receiving the Sakharov Prize. And all kinds of my friends have been sending me copies of congratulatory emails they've been sending to John Polanyi. Now, I'm sure that what this really means that there must be two different Sakharov prizes. Hello, Charles. How are things in Vukovar?
Well, we're anticipating 17, 18, 19, 20 November, which is 30 years since the war began and 30 years since lots and lots of massacres around here. And it's going to be an utter mess here in town because all the nationalists are going to come on those days, despite COVID. It happened last year as well. But now with this 30th anniversary thing, it's going to be an utter and complete mess. That's one thing that's happening. In Croatia, it's very, very nationalist at the moment. And in fact, in all of this territory, there are my big thing, obviously, or our big thing, I should say, is migrants and the whole traumatization situation. The pushbacks are awful, are violent all over Europe. We have one client in Greece who's from an African country, and he's being treated absolutely horribly, not getting the care.
Let's explain what you do and why you're referring to this man.
Sorry.
Charles runs psychotherapy programs for survivors of war and trauma.
And we give a lot of education. We try to educate people who have not had training in trauma to be able to give peers, to give to their own groups assistance. By the way, our 2020, would you believe, annual report is now out. It's on our website. I'll put our website in the chat. Yeah, now we have to start writing the one for 2021. So we're going quite crazy with all the trainings, with all the writing. It's certain that we have work for the next, I don't know, a couple of 100 years with the amount of trauma. And that's certainly going to be increased by COVID and all the rest of it.
But what we'll do is we will declare a ceasefire, so there'll be no more violence for the next 3 years and give you a chance to get caught up. Charles, how about that?
I think we have to declare ceasefires in every country at the moment.
That's right. We'll do that any day now.
Yeah, and in the next, maybe 20, 30 years, we could train people and maybe by the next century, do some actual work on trauma. That including the transgenerational transmission to future generations. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's we're
so
going
what do you
quite
expect? You say there's going to be trouble when these anniversaries arise, and you're going to have what do you call them? Croatian nationalist Ustasha folks? Is that Ustasha? Hangovers of people who would have been Ustasha versus who?
They are. I make no mistake about it.
They still are. Mm-hmm. Okay, and what's the other group? These are the Serbs?
There are Serbs before this war, before that is the 1991 war. There were some 25 different ethnic groups in Vukovar. There's many of them are still around, but they just don't make their presence known because of the nationalism. Even now, restaurants, schools are segregated. So this is 26 years after the war ended. And it's even worse in Bosnia.
So you're expecting these people to get into street fights or what?
We don't know what. We hope they won't. We know that every year they come from all over the world, literally. There are people from New Zealand, Australia, you name it, they come.
Mm-hmm. What's happened in the last 2 or 3 years when they've come? What kinds of things?
Oh, all kinds of violence. People generally stay off the street. People from other ethnic groups generally stay off the streets.
Do they have an organized conference or anything like that, or celebration or memorial? Or?
They have marches to the memorial cemetery. They have marches to the river, to the Danube. They do all kinds of things. There are church services, you name it. And unfortunately, despite what Pope Francis says, there is no Christian unity here. Yeah, it's pretty awful stuff. And I must say, we're not only working in Vukovar here, but we're doing a lot of work in Nigeria right now. In fact, I have another group pretty soon in Nigeria. We're doing work in Congo. We're doing work with the Uyghurs, with the Uyghur diaspora. In fact, a few of them in Canada.
Really? No, I'm not aware of where these people are going. Are many of them leaving China or Xinjiang, if you want to call it China?
They call it East Turkestan. And they're going to Australia and New Zealand. They're going to Canada. They're going to Europe. A lot of them are in Turkey, which is obvious because it's close and they speak a similar language. We're working with, refugees, trying to teach them how to give trauma assistance to other people. That's our basic job.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you.
Very, very sad. But all of these things are extremely sad. So,
do any of you have questions for Charles? I'm sure you May.
Yes, I do.
Hi,
Yeah.
Dale. How are you?
Hi, Meta. Yeah, I love your little Facebook. They took your name and dropped a T. You know, how is that? You should be able to see them.
I should say what we're referring to. I can't read it because I can't remember exactly, but somebody said I should sue Facebook because they're changing their name to Meta. It's spelled different, but anyway, I said, no, I'm not going to sue them. I mean, I have prevailed in my longstanding struggle with them. And in fact, I have taken over the company. And henceforth, I'm going to be I'm changing the company name to Meta. And from now on, if you want to contact me, you should get in touch with Mark Zuckerberg because he's going to be my assistant handling my correspondence. However, you should be aware that we're continuing to monitor your activities. And I, in fact, know what you bought yesterday, and I know what you did last summer. So be careful.
Yes, Meta. Thank you. I almost think that being absurd is our next tool.
Mm-hmm.
In just about everything. I wanted to ask Charles
Yes.
where he is right now and when he speaks of we, who is we?
Okay, I've put our website onto the chat. So you can see we're called the Coalition for Work with Psychotrauma and Peace. And I am in Vukovar. I have one colleague who is lovely, lovely woman. She's a sociologist. She also does therapy. She does a great deal of our research. And we're in Vukovar, which is Eastern Croatia.
Yes, I should put up the number of the show because I did a talk show with, you can watch that show to find out what all they're doing. It's quite an interesting show about the challenges involved in such a project. So,
and we have a couple of videos on the website.
So we have Natasha coming in. I don't know Natasha. Welcome.
Hello. I'm trying.
Okay. Where are you, Natasha?
I'm in Moscow, Russia.
Oh, wonderful. I love to have people from Russia here nowadays. How are things in Moscow?
It's okay.
It's what?
Hello.
Hello, everybody here. This is Natasha. Nice to meet you. What do you do normally, and how did you find us?
I received emails in friend's house, Moscow.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we do have connections in Moscow. Yes. By the way, I just mentioned that just before you arrived that we've just heard that Navalny will receive the Sakharov Prize, but I'm confused because I think there must be at least 2 different Sakharov prizes, one of which is going to John Polanyi, who's a Canadian. Do you know anything about that? No?
I don't know.
Okay, well, welcome to, and say hello to my friends in the Friends meeting in Moscow. I used to know some of those people. Good. Okay, so who else wants to chime in on this? Are we through with the issue of chemical weapons? We've been talking about that, Natasha, and I think we may have exhausted our knowledge of the subject. Who else has something new that you'd like to share?
Can I ask
Yes.
Natasha a question?
Sure.
You know that COP26 is getting underway. How do people in Moscow or in Russia feel about Putin not attending?
I know about that because of my connections with friends. And there was almost nothing about the event in Russian news, in Russian media. So people are mostly unaware about anything.
I see.
That is really sad. I have to say that I have a lot of contacts in Russia. I wrote a book about Russia. So I do have, at least I used to have a lot of friends there. I'm not
They
keeping.
might not be your friends since you published a book. They might not be your friends.
Oh, no, my friends are still my friends. But the problem is, you know, you lose touch with people and
Yeah.
it's been a long time. So a lot of these folks have died. But, you know, so I'm in touch occasionally with friends there. And I do have the impression that not many Russians are very engaged with or fully aware of the severity of the problem that we're facing about climate change. And in fact, I'm trying to get in touch, maybe Natasha can even help me. I'm trying to get in touch with some of the scientists in Russia who do work on things like the melting permafrost or the methane clathrates in the Arctic Ocean, especially the East Siberian Sea and the Laptev Sea and so on. And I'm very concerned about that, but I haven't been able to make contact with people to interview. So if you can find a person who's a knowledgeable scientist on those issues, I'd love to make contact with him or her, if you can find somebody, okay? Do you know of anybody by any chance who knows about that topic?
Scientists, I know historians, religion activists, but not scientists so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, anyway, I hope to let's stay in touch.
And will you give me the title of your book?
Oh, it's called The Russian Quest for Peace and Democracy. And it's only in English, although I had it translated into Russian, but then people told me that it couldn't possibly be translated, couldn't be published in Russia because Putin would not approve. So it's not been published in Russian, even though I have the Russian translation.
Yes, we have long public holidays the whole week. Gyms are closed and supermarkets and libraries, but otherwise there are no restrictions. So we can go to the park, we can travel, we can visit families, and QR codes are not required anywhere except museums. And
well,
almost nobody
most people have not been vaccinated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And what's your interpretation of why that is?
There are some superstitions and bad feelings and mistrust, especially in the province. In Moscow, my friends are all either vaccinated or they had illness.
I think that's probably true everywhere, that the people who resist vaccination are people who have real skepticism about whether the government is being honest. Yeah. And we get some people here. I was reading something on Facebook yesterday. It just appalled me. It's a woman I know, sort of. And she was going on and on about how, you know, they're trying to infringe on your freedom by making you take things that are really bad for you. All these vaccines are bad for you and so on. I was shocked, but you know, there are a lot of folks like that. Do we all know somebody who is refusing vaccination? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So everybody knows somebody mostly. Yeah. It's hard to take, isn't it? Yeah.
I also know someone who accepted vaccination and died shortly thereafter.
Oh, did you really? Okay. Well, that is hard to take, you know. Good. Anne, I think you've had your hand up waiting patiently a long time, so you can speak.
Well, what I wanted to tell you is I found an article on the internet from regarding John Poliani winning the Andrei Sakharov Prize, and it says here that he won the Sakharov Prize from the American Physical Society.
Mhm.
And the American Physical Society has an award named after Andrei Sakharov, a nuclear physicist, etc. And what I have done is I have sent that that article to project@savetheworld.ca.
Thank you.
So if you want to keep a record of that, and others could draw up this article.
Mhm.
It's an article from the University of Toronto, Department of Chemistry. So I assume it's accurate.
Oh, sure. That would make perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So it's
and
an
that,
American prize in the name of
uh-huh,
Andrei Sakharov.
uh-huh. Okay. Well, so we
For a
have
point
two,
of clarity.
yeah, we have two different Sakharov prizes, but when they announced it in the paper, they didn't say, which one. They
No.
treated it as if it's just one. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. That really clarifies a lot.
I would like to address something that Alan said a moment ago. He said that he knows someone who had the vaccination and then died. And the implication, I think, unless we ask him further, that maybe the vaccination had something to do with the death. But as a physician, I can assure him the vaccination did not kill this person. There's no way. About 5 or 10 people in a million get a pericarditis and so on, but it's not killed anybody. So there's something else that killed this person, not the vaccine.
Robert, there's one person I know who has a relative in Sweden, I believe. It's Jill Carr Harris, and her relative was one of the very, very, very few people who came down with this blood clot reaction.
Oh, yes.
So there are a handful, very few, but certainly it's not unheard of. And this guy almost died. So I think some people have died from the blood clot thing, but it's
so extremely rare.
Right. Uh-huh. Okay, Aya, you have your hand up again. Let's hear from you.
Okay. Just to add to that conversation regarding vaccines, from our parliamentarians' point of view, I can tell you we've been receiving thousands of emails. It's more of a form letter, and it's from people that are not necessarily anti-vaxxers, but it says the subject always reads, please repeal the authorization to give this vaccine to children. So the opposition is specifically to vaccinating children. And we're hearing a lot about that because their argument is that it hasn't been tested long enough to see the long-term side effects of the vaccine, especially to the one that was recently released for 5 to 11-year-olds. So they don't want that to be mandatory. And the other reason is they're against that is because the children, they believe children are not affected by COVID. The side effect of not vaccinating them is almost nil. So why expose them to a vaccine that may have side effects when COVID has no effect on that age group? So they're against making COVID vaccines mandatory to children. I don't have a point of view on that. I'm just saying that's what we're hearing in the parliament.
Okay, well, I'm sure that there are also people who've been objecting and refusing to take it for adults as well, and that they make the same argument that it hasn't been tested long enough. But in fact, we do know that children have died and do, in fact, with the Delta virus, I'm pretty sure when I've listened to Dr. Fauci, that with the Delta virus, it's affecting younger people more than the first strains did. And anyway, maybe I've forgotten who wants to speak now, but I should allow somebody who's an expert on this.
I'd like to.
Robert, do you want to talk about that? You're a physician.
Yes.
And maybe Deo too. I don't know.
I got my hand up.
Okay. First of all, the adults. Some people who are wary of the vaccine have the reason that it's not been tested, an untested vaccine. You may remember back about July of 2020 already, about 4 months after the COVID struck, that there were probably 70 different vaccines already developed to be tested. And you may remember that there was a lull of about 6 months from about July of 2020 to January of 2021 when they started saying 2 or 3 or 4 of these vaccines were now tested and ready. And then we were also anxious waiting, when are they going to manufacture enough of them so most of us can get them? But during that 6-month period, July of 2020 to January 2021, there was a rapid worldwide, actually wonderful passage through all of the stages that every drug has to pass through in order to be used, be able to be prescribed in medicine. Every drug has to go through a number of tests. First, is it effective? Secondly, is it safe? Basic studies, and then very large epidemiological studies, double blind, so that the people evaluating the results don't know which people are in which group. They've had the vaccine or they haven't. And they've went through all of that before they came on the market in January and February, or became available, of 2021. All that was done. They're not untested. They're as thoroughly or more thoroughly tested than any other drug that is prescribed today by any doctor. So that they're completely tested. And now that it's becoming these same groups, the same testing has been very carefully over a full year on children. And these studies are now showing, including the large epidemiological studies, that they are safe and effective. And the children mostly do not get the disease, if they get it, clinically as great as adults or as great frequency, but those who get it can get a very severe disease. Just look at reports out of the Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. And also, of course, they spread it. So if they catch it but don't have it much clinically or don't have any symptoms, they're still spreading it to others, which will go up to older people and cause deaths. So there are definite reasons they should have the vaccines, and they have, before they started announcing recently they can be used, they've been thoroughly tested.
Thank you. And Dale?
Well, mostly I would just second what Robert has already said. I put in the chat John Oliver's YouTube. If you want to watch it, he also has a segment in there that shows how easy it is to make a misinformation YouTube or advertising or web space. I spent a whole day because a close friend who I really felt badly that had drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, the QAnon and anti-vaxxer Kool-Aid. And those guys who are putting out those websites are making 1H a lot of money. A huge amount of money is to be made in being an anti-vaxxer and publishing it.
How? Who would pay them?
So go to those websites and see what they're advertising if you really want to. There's books being advertised. There's every single advertisement on a website, every single drop-in ad or whatever else you want to see on one of those websites has been paid for.
I don't understand who has an interest, who would benefit financially from having somebody not take a vaccine. How could anybody make a profit off that?
I could answer that. A typical website is one that says that these vaccines are poisonous, that many of them say a lot of the medications that are prescribed by doctors are in cahoots with the villainous pharmaceutical companies that are making money off of many drugs that will kill you. And therefore, instead, this doctor so-and-so, through his great expertise over devoting his whole life to it, has come up with this remedy consisting of these herbs. And if you purchase our markdown, if you act fast enough, from $100 to $50 for 50 tablets, if you act fast enough, why, you can order by mail and get your supply and be protected against diabetes and glaucoma and heart disease.
The other things that can be sold are magnetizing things you stand on that put energy through your body and keep you away from the COVID, won't attack you if you have this kind of energy going through your body. You have no idea, Meta, what some of those websites sell. And I'm on two listservs, one for rural physicians in Canada and the other for the emergency room physicians in Canada. And in both cases, I see what we ourselves have gone through. I mean, it was doctors that discovered, by trying everything we could try, discovered that putting a patient prone on their stomachs was better for them than having them lying on their back.
Is this a new thing? I hadn't heard about that.
Oh, it probably, when did we start doing it? Last spring, maybe? Like a year ago? It was done last summer when I was working.
Oh, yeah.
And it was because doctors discovered it by trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, ivermectin and chloroquine was trialed by physicians in the field before we were doing everything. We were desperate to try and help our patients when COVID first came around.
By the way, are you still going?
Anything about it?
Dale, are you still going to the Arctic? I know that when we talked last, you were spending about 1 week a month in a town in the Arctic, or at least so far north. Are you still practicing medicine up there?
Yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
When were you there last? And do they have any? I hear that Yellowknife has had an outbreak.
The community that I have served the most is Cambridge Bay, and we have not. We have not in Kugaruk or Kiglutuk, but I'm being asked to go up to Arviat over Christmas, and Arviat is the place that hit the national news because a guy was discharged from hospital from a minor surgery in Winnipeg and was not kept for his 2 weeks of isolation before going back to Arviat. They had 200 cases and 2 deaths as a result of that one person. There's no way I was part of the decision-making crew back in March of 2020. And we decided on March the 5th to isolate the North.
Isolate the North? The whole country? What do you mean?
Well, all of Nunavut. You could not fly into Nunavut unless you had a 2-week isolation, and then obeyed all the COVID rules.
Is that still the case?
When I went up to practice It's still the case because I've been sent my information about RVET. When I went up to practice, I wound up having to isolate at home for 2 weeks, send a letter to the public health people up there saying that I was doing that. And then I had to record that letter, send that letter again within 3 days of going, and have a negative test. I would then be flown to Yellowknife, at which in Yellowknife, I'm in an isolation hotel. If I want to even go out of the hotel, I have to take my meals in the If I need to go out of the hotel, I have a floor monitor on the hallway who takes my name, makes sure he knows exactly where I'm going, and that I have to obey protocol when I'm out, and could essentially say, no, you can't go as well. And then when I fly up, I am doing all of my clinical service in PPE.
It'd be interesting to compare that to northern Russia. Has so many more people in your Arctic than Canadians do. But I wonder, is there anything comparable going on in the northern cities to what Dale has described about Nunavut in Canada? You know?
Well, clearly, you wouldn't go to northern Canada if you're really worried about your freedom.
That's true. People who want to avoid vaccination probably should bear that in mind. That's very good.
That's right.
Now let's see. We have several newcomers here. Nurit Finkel is joining us. Estella Schmid. Now let's see who else. Welcome, newcomers. And Chantal, Charles Nantel still hasn't spoken, but I think you're there.
Hello.
Hello, Estella. Okay,
Hello.
Where are you?
I'm in London. I'm from, I work with on international issues, specifically with the Kurds now. My main call of organizations what is called Peace in Kurdistan. Okay.
I didn't get that. Kurdistan, did you say?
Kurdistan, yes, Kurdistan. The whole region in the Middle East, covering Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's movements along the region everywhere today in a very, very big upheaval because of attacks by the Turkish state in the whole region, and all-out war with, this is it, with chemical weapons. This is one of the reasons I wrote to you and also some other friends, Dimitri in Canada, to get help on this campaign. Because it's really a very, very serious issue.
Please explain it to us. If you say you've written to me, I'm afraid I didn't notice.
All right.
Sorry. Now, tell us. Now, you say you're in London, England, or are you? We have a London here in Canada, and it always confuses people. Are you in England or in Canada?
No, I'm in London, in England.
Okay. Okay, so what is your campaign?
Well, the campaign is, specifically at the moment focused on Turkey's war against the Kurds in the region. And not only the Kurds, you have also the wider Middle East with Greece, Cyprus, at the moment. And it unfortunately, of course, seems to be wholly supported by the Western powers, because it's a very important NATO ally. Of course, they controlling through Turkey the whole region, and specifically Germany at the moment. A lot of the weapons programs that have been launched in Europe recently are very much to do with the policy of Germany, controlling indirectly through Turkey, actually, the Middle East, for military and conflict. And this is very, very obvious for us here. And it affects the Kurds brutally. I mean, people are killed by, what people claim who have visited the region, and from reports from the region, an all-out war with chemical weapons, drones, etc., etc.
Now, wait a minute, hold on. This is chemical weapons that the Turkish government is using against the Kurds. Is this the Kurds in eastern Turkey?
Yes. Yeah, it is mainly the Kurds, but it also affects other minorities, of course, in the course of the war. But their target is the Kurds.
Is that around Van, or where is that?
That is in all parts.
Mm-hmm.
That is at the moment mainly focused on Iraq, Kurdish region in Iraq in the north, which is part of, follows Turkey. In Turkey itself, you have about 25 million Kurds. The Kurds are affected there in a war. In Syria, there is a Kurdish region now. The war is against the Kurds there. So it's, and then in cooperation partly with Iran, you also have, Iran cooperating here in the region, with the war against the Kurds.
Now, tell me about this chemical thing. We already had a bit of a conversation earlier before you arrived about a plan to change the Canadian, Canada's position on the Chemical Weapons Convention to include the banning specifically of Novichok. But you're talking about something that I don't think any of us. Oh, here Aya is saying something in relation to the thing. Aya says that Turkey uses cluster munitions. Aya, do you want to join in a conversation here with our friend? Maybe the two of you can.
I am familiar with that topic. Basically, Turkey is one of the few countries that's been criticized for using cluster munitions, which are banned, and we're looking to ban them. And many have called for sanctions against Turkey when they use cluster munitions against their civil war with the. Sorry, help me, Estella.
I mean, maybe in Nagorno-Karabakh? No.
Thank you. That's exactly what the name I wanted, Nagorno-Karabakh. They just had a huge war with last summer. Not this summer, the summer before, I believe, 2020.
There was a big confrontation,
Yeah, in that conflict, its investigation proved that actually both sides were using cluster munitions, which are banned, and that is horrible against civilians, and we should always discourage the use of cluster munitions because it's the civilians that get harmed and killed the most. So we are looking to, the investigation is still ongoing to sanction countries that use cluster munitions.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware of chemical weapons.
Yeah, well, I can send you all reports, which maybe you might be interested to see, because there are from the region reports from the actual people engaged in the war, meaning to say from the Kurdish side. Yeah, they have reports, material, photos, etc., and we did have a kind of reaction from the European Union. From the, there is committees who are supposed to follow what's happening in Turkey also on the chemical weapons. And they actually said, yes, there is something like this, but of course their mouth is closed. They cannot talk about it. It's secret reports given to the government. And apparently this, has not emerged. And we're talking here specifically about Turkey, of course, inside Turkey, the drone and the attacks. In the region itself, there was hardly anyone, except, of course, some friends who come from the peace movement, from the CND, individuals, journalists, who said it's obvious something has to be done. This is really serious. Now, so and so many people have died, you know.
But now, excuse me, but wouldn't the OPCW or whatever, the Organization on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, wouldn't they be asked to come and investigate any case that's alleged of that kind?
Yeah, I mean, the main point here is that we are trying to get, you know, an independent, you know, sort of investigation and a delegation to go to the region, okay? So that is what we are trying to aim at the moment, apart from raising the issue through reports, through evidence that we get from local people, but also from journalists who visited the region, you know? So, you know, really, we really think this is a very, very important issue.
Do you know what, does anybody have any idea what kind of chemical is involved?
Yeah, well, that is the problem. We are not quite sure. There is a report which I could send, which gives you details. I'm not directly an expert on the thing, but I could, you know, forward.
Well, if I may suggest, when I edit this show and I put it onto our website, which is tosavetheworld.ca, it will have a whole page, and each show has a separate comments column. So forever, and if you come across some other information relevant, even a year from now, you can go to that comments column and post your information. So whenever you have something interesting, important to say further about this, please go there.
One includes a journalist who spent the last 3-4 months for that reason in the region. Okay, and he has brought us a lot of evidence. Of course, he cannot be 100% certain either, but everything points to it. And so far, as I said, there was nobody officially, you know, who would come down and investigate. You know, all the attempts that we made to the Turkish government, the European Union, apart from one organization who gives report to Turkey, okay, and also indirectly to the Union about weapons, chemical and other, they, you know, unfortunately said, yes, there seems to be evidence, but they cannot talk about it. So, I mean, it's sort of all very mysterious, part of the military, you know. Games.
Now, what is your role in this organization, Estella? Are you a researcher or what?
No, I'm a political activist since I'm 80 years old. And have given up my work in 1996 to work as a political activist with the Kurdish freedom movement, yes, in all parts. So I'm linked to the Kurdish movement very strongly, but I also work on the global war on terror, meaning to say on global issues relating to legislation on terrorism. And there I work with communities spreading as far as India, Kashmir, Africa, and 2 countries in Latin America, etc. So it's both issues on military and weapons. And of course, my special area is actually working with the internationalist movement, you know, which are affected by the terrorism legislation, which is a very, very serious issue. So this is in very brief, okay? So,
well, thank you. Aya, did you have something to add on this to what Estella has said about the chemical weapons?
I'm not aware of chemical weapons being used, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's been found. I believe, yes.
I would certainly think that we ought to get those, you know, that organization. It's in The Hague, I think, and I think it's OPCW. Is that the name of it, Estella? They won the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago for their work in investigating allegations of chemical weapons use.
I just want to, in about 40 seconds, I want to raise a question. There is a huge international rollout of a scheme called nature-based solutions, in which Wall Street and European carbon marketers and the UN are involved. And I would be interested in knowing anybody else who has done research on this, and in particular, exactly what mechanisms are being used to raise the money. Some very interesting applications of the money are being proposed in Canada. There's been a 5-year study of indigenous controlled conservation areas, which is a great idea. But my fear is that this is being paid for by carbon offsets, which are basically licenses for big polluters to keep on polluting. So on the one hand, there's this very important international obligation to increase conservation and save biodiversity and appeal to indigenous control. On the other hand, the way of doing that seems a bit dubious. So I would love to hear from anybody else.
This, when you say nature-based solutions, it's solutions to climate change issues, or what?
That's the UN's current slogan for it. It's been called other things in the past, like red and blue carbon and LULUCF. But in the last 2 years, all of these things have been rolled into nature-based solutions. That's the official name of it.
I don't know much about the term nature-based solutions, but I know that the Climate Action Network in Canada really is very skeptical of promoting the carbon capture solutions as justification for prolonging the fossil fuel industry. It's kind of regarded as a lifeline for them, and something that ought not to be highlighted as an important solution to climate change.
I'm in Texas today, enjoying a conversation on a topic about which I know absolutely nothing.
Okay.
Hi. What I find interesting is that the Kyoto, the Paris, and the UN conference all on the climate, there is really no mention of the fossil fuel industry, and the military have been excluded from that. And World Beyond War is trying to get rid of the exclusion of the military's contribution to greenhouse gases. But unfortunately, there is no country at the moment that is taking up that cause. So neither Costa Rica or any of the other countries that don't have a military, they unfortunately are not taking up this cause. And it just highlights also how the fossil fuel industry has been able to divert, delay attention to their industry in particular on solving the climate crisis. So that's something that I wasn't really all that aware of. I've been aware of course, since Kyoto about military being excluded. But what I wasn't aware of how the fossil fuel industry has also been able to keep mention of their industry out of these climate issues, namely Kyoto, Paris, and the UN. So, and now with COP26, again, these are not specifically on the table from my understanding.
That's really so, Richard, because are you familiar with the non-fossil fuel proliferation treaty that is being promoted and signed on to by certainly cities in the Western world, both Europe and Canada? It's my impression it's very topical at the COP meetings coming up.
I'm very familiar with that, Rose, but unfortunately, none of the actual states that are doing the deliberation on COP26 have taken that up. And the fossil fuel prohibition treaty is based actually on the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So that's their inspiration. And they have three planks. One, not to invest, doing any more research in or looking for new fossil fuel. Two, use up what we've got. And three, transition to renewable solar, wind, etc., geothermal. So those are its three planks, and they're certainly been taken up by the NGOs, the non-government organizations, but they're not being taken up by any of the states which are actually making the decisions at COP26. And it is yet to be taken up even in the UN. So the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is now international law in the 56 countries that have ratified it. The Fossil Fuel Prohibition Treaty has not even got to that stage yet. So it hasn't got to the UN stage. It has not been taken up by any of the states that are present at COP26. It is being taken up by the cities. So here in Canada, Toronto and Vancouver have both signed on to the Fossil Fuel Prohibition Treaty. But there's 16 cities that have signed on to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons here in Canada. So again, it is definitely lagging in that respect. And yet, on the other hand, you've got Greta Thunberg and all the Fridays for the Future, and certainly the climate crisis has the much better take up by the public at large. Nobody knows or cares about nuclear weapons in the public, but in terms of treaties, the Fossil Fuel Prohibition Treaty is not there yet.
Interesting. Thank you.
The first point that I think Richard also made is that relatively little of the climate discussion has actually dealt with the war system and the extent to which militarism is really a driver of the fossil fuel pollution and climate disruption. And until the climate environmental movement and the anti-militarism movement make some hand-to-hand understanding, we're really missing the momentum that is needed to deal with this situation. The control of corporations to stop their pollution and to be accountable for what they do is marvelously developed in a film I saw the other day on plastics and the effect of single-use plastic as a polluter all over the world, the incapacity of recycling, and the displacement of responsibility from the producers of this stuff to the poor people who have to deal with it. When the fishermen in their catch have 60% fish, but 40% of the weight of their catch is plastic that they have to get out of their thing to be able to, out of their nets to be able to market their fish. This is a crisis all over the world, and it's on our kitchen tables every time you look at what you come back from the store. And I think if this question were put into our agenda of the critical questions of the 7 that you got on the critical question list, Meta, it really brings it home to how we actually invest in both in our consumer habits and our lack of political focus in the support of the fossil fuel industry. And the plastics is an integral part of the oil and all that. It's just another byproduct of the extractive industries. And I think overall, we need to re-emphasize in the beginning of everything we say that what we need is a system change from the corporate domination of a war system to a system of healing from this last 5,000 years toward peace, a culture of peace and nonviolence, toward mutual aid, toward healing, and toward cooperation, where the Department of Defense says their vision is full spectrum domination. I think we have to say our vision has to be full spectrum cooperation, that between all our different silos of interest, we have to see how do we go hand in hand to see a different system is what is needed. And I think everyone who is suffering in one way or another from the dysfunction of what is going on recognizes that it is a system problem. And if we could reemphasize that vocabulary, we would find a greater resonance among all the different people who are concerned with the mess that we are living in and actually unlikely to survive for the next generation unless we really have a greater coherence of and resonance of consciousness. So system change is what we need. And I appreciate that this got back to looking at the fossil fuel corporations and all their allies that are extracting from the earth, where there are really other ways to sustain a civilization or perhaps create one. Is this civilization doing? Well, we'll have to see.
Thank you so much, Alan. That's dear to my heart as well. I agree with you. Robert is a newcomer. Hello, Robert.
It's Robert Peel. Can you hear me?
I can. It'd be nice if I could see you too.
I'm in Wendell, BC. I sent you a letter that I wrote Prime Minister Trudeau with regards to our education system, because I think that would solve a lot of problems too, is education reform.
What is it you'd like to have changed with the education system?
Well, I think the whole top-down approach is the wrong approach. It's sort of the corporate approach. I'm thinking project-based learning is the route to go, because it gives a lot more freedom for students to think on their own. And it engages them with the community to work on issues instead of shutting them into prison-like structures, is to have them part of the conversation of the communities.
Are you a teacher?
Yes, I'm homeschooling my granddaughter. I completed a master's in educational foundation in 2014. I'm actually a geologist.
Okay. Well,
but my biggest learning was actually going into grade 3 classes, and it changed my whole perception on geology just from the questions and interacting with the grade 3ers.
Okay.
Okay. I just sent a little chat item around to everybody because I'm fascinated by the article in Science magazine in July, and you have the date and title in my little chat item. It says that there are certain bacterial enzymes that can just digest some plastic waste. And it's going to be an epiphany for the world. Are the bacteria that enzymes that digest plastic going to save us from ourselves? And that's all. That was a question. Anybody know about it?
I heard it too, but I don't know the details. What do you have when you get through? Do they? Well, it depends. There's several different things that are being studied, and the patents are out there, because what's the first thing a scientist does when he has a good idea and it looks like it works in the test tube? Get a patent. And the university, if you're working at a university, requires the patent be in the name of the university, because they paid you while you did the research. But in any case, the bottom line is, if this actually turns out to be true and we can develop enzymes and bacteria that will eat the plastic, that's a small step forward, but it might be better than having it take up 100,000 times more of our planet than it would if we could get the enzymes to eat it first. Yeah, but what do they do when they excrete it? They've eaten it. Now, what do you have left?
You're asking the wrong person to explain it. The article does, and I admire the guy who did it, because he's not a scientist, he's a journalist, but the material is there, and anybody who wants to take the time to look at it, please send an email about whether you think it's valid.
Okay, let's find somebody who's qualified, and you're gonna read it, and then next month you come back and tell us about it. Somebody
I've read the article.
Oh, okay, good. What do you have to say?
Well, it's like every new invention. The article leaves an awful lot of questions. Your best question is, what have they got left after they've digested it? But the other thing is that it's dependent. It's not a global solution, because it doesn't deal with all plastics. It only deals with a particular type of plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So however, the positive side of that is that if you have a bacteria that deals with one or two different types of plastics, then that does leave us open to the potential of finding a bacteria that deals with them all. Could be, as you know, all of the plastics we deal with are a whole lot of different types of plastics. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to save us from ourselves. We still have a Pacific Ocean island that's made out of plastic, and it's going to take an awful lot of bacteria a long time to do all that eating. Mm-hmm. But it's certainly I think it's a step forward.
My granddaughter and I just finished off a report on plastic. It was a 2-year research project for her grade 8. Mm-hmm. And we've come out with, we did quite extensive research into it. And it's really a very complex situation is what we found. But we found that Canadian government was actually taking the lead globally on to dealing with it. And there is a cross-country zero waste initiative going on right now. But it's getting blowback from the industry as well. So Alan has brought up, when I joined, I just was catching the tail end of Alan's talk about the plastic. And yeah, it's something we have to deal with. And I think our research just made more questions than answers. But if anybody's interested in reading our report, it's about 40 pages long, indicating what's been done with our government, what our government's attempting to do, and what the provincial government's doing, at least from BC's point of view. Mm-hmm. I could definitely send that to you, Mena, and you could distribute it.
No, post it by all means. Put it on as soon as I post when I put this talk show on its own page on our website to savetheworld.ca, there's a comments column there. So you can keep discussing this topic forever. I mean, people a year from now, if they come up with a new thing about digesting plastic, well, they can come and add it to that comment. And if somebody replies to something you've posted, we'll let you know so you can, engage with them further. So by all means, anything you have to say after this show, you can add it. Everybody can add it. In fact, people who haven't attended this can add it too. So we can have a conversation.
Okay, so you're talking about the comments in the YouTube channel?
No, not the YouTube. It's our website. It's called savetheworld.ca.
Okay.
And we have many, many things there. We have these talk shows, and we have places where there are general discussions of our 6 global issues, which are war and weapons, global warming, famine, pandemics, radioactive contamination, and cyber risks. And what I may be doing, I can't announce this yet, but because it's not even been negotiated, but I think that there will be a new partner in maintaining a separate section on the economy. And this is somebody who has a particular interest in developing, understanding the Green New Deal as it's being put together in various countries. Many countries, not just the US, have something they're calling either the Green New Deal or Green Deal or New Deal or something. And they have some things in common and some differences. So this man is holding a number of meetings with people who are experts on different countries and their Green New Deal projects. So that may be something that you can watch for in the next month or so in the on our website under the heading economics, because we have three sectors besides the 6 global threats. We have a section discussing governance, one on the economy, and one on civil society. So be on the lookout that you may find some new material there worth reading. We haven't had much there yet on the economy until now, but I'd like to encourage people to post things in these comment columns. We want to get them to be used. That's the whole point of having it. Anyway, here I am blowing our horn instead of letting you people talk. Who has?
Could I just interject here? Because I've been researching education for 20 years. The concept of sustainable development. Mm-hmm. I think an important sector that you should have posted is education, because our kids got to be part of this discussion.
They'll be part of civil society.
Okay.
Yeah, address it under that.
Okay.
Alan, is your hand up again, or you just didn't put it down? Yeah, okay, Alan.
It's back up. I wanted to, the film I mentioned on plastics does have some reference to this new research on the bacteria. I will forward this to you, Meta. The film is available for free distribution through the month of November. It has won a few awards, and after that, it's going to be a commercial property. But the people who made it have done a beautiful job, and it is available. I hope that it can get on the website, that people can look at it. It's an hour and 20 minutes or so, and it really brings home what I mentioned quite whimsically, that there should be a 7th topic in your list of 6 that deals with the consequences of the fossil fuel industry, particularly plastics. And I did hear one other thing in the new technology area. One of the inventions, developments that it has great potential for the future, if we have one, is a material called graphene, which is a structure of carbon atoms, 1 atom thick, that has amazing conductivity properties and strength beyond steel. And it's generally, as it has been researched, it's derived from the extractive industry, but it can also be created out of hemp, one of the great products that God has given us, and also from recycled, harvested plastic out of the ocean. So there is perhaps use for this trash that the fossil fuel industry, the plastic industry, better things for better living through chemistry, if people remember that from years back. And the place for plastic is in the garbage can, is what they said in 1956. Well, it turns out the earth is their garbage can. And how do we clean? Oh, a kitty cat. How do we clean that up? So I hope that people, I will put this to you, Meta, see if I can figure out how to put it on the website. But this film on plastics is available for free sharing. So I'm trying to share it around through November. And it's won a few awards, and then it's going to be out more commercially.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Post it, and I'm sure.
Keep your eye on graphene. It's another
Graphene, right? And it's one of those things that Buckminster Fuller invented, wasn't it? It's part of the. You got these. It's like carbon nanotubes or something, right? They're all.
Well, it's a carbon matrix, 1 atom thick.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
if you put an elephant on top of it, it will not break through. If you put an
Okay.
elephant on a billiard pin on top of it, the billiard pin will not break through. It has amazing strength, and who knows what it will become.
Okay. I'm all for it. Let's all run out and see if we can get hold of some graphene and talk about it next time. Very good.
Mette, you were saying earlier that there hasn't been much emphasis on the economic development on the project, Save the World website. The Toronto branch of the World Federalists right now has quite a lively discussion going on the subject of a common prosperity. Can democracy provide it, or is an autocratic country like China more likely to deliver on it? But the emphasis, within the Climate Action Network is on clean prosperity. And I just wonder, within the context of economic trends, how hopeful those of you who think about these things on climate and so on are for the divestment trends. And Mark Carney's council, I guess, that he's using to organize the major financial institutions around the world on behalf of the UN. And it's my understanding he's taking this to the COP26 meeting, and most of the major banks have signed on, and Canada, I think, finally our 6 major ones signed on. For the longest time, there was only one credit union from Vancouver that was a part of this international club, but that's changed. Now, there continues to be vigilance through the Climate Action Network on the extent to which these banks are still funding fossil fuel industries, or not divesting quickly enough, and are being accused of greenwashing. But what do some of the rest of the people see as these trends for financial divestment?
Mm-hmm. Good issue. I noticed yesterday I think somebody posted on Facebook that University of Toronto has promised to divest from fossil fuels by something like 2050 or 2060 or something like that. And I thought, why do they have to wait so long? What is
I thought it was sooner. I thought it was sooner than that, Mette.
But it didn't. I just remembered. I'm sorry. I'm not being fair because I'm making that up. But I do remember. Whatever the date was, it struck me as way too far in the future. Why isn't it possible to just do it overnight?
Well, I'll just look up. It seems to be it's at 2030, or maybe I got that wrong.
Okay. Well, 2030.
Still a long way off.
If I had stock I don't like, I'd tell my broker to sell it tomorrow. It wouldn't take me very long at all. Okay, Richard.
Just to add to that, I mean, Rose, I'd appreciate more information about what our government is doing, but I mean, certainly right now, our government is giving tremendous amounts of subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. There's a number of NGOs, namely Susie Schneider with PAX has a program called Don't Bank on the Bomb, which is to divest pension funds and banks out of the nuclear industry. World Beyond War has a program where they're doing the same. And parliamentarians, Alan Ware's program has also have a divestment program. We in Rotary have.
Excuse me, Richard, does Alan Ware's thing cover both nuclear divestment and fossil fuel divestment, or just one?
The ones that I've just mentioned are all on the nuclear, but the idea, of course, is to do both. So when they are these organizations I just mentioned, the 3 of them, are focusing on the nuclear, but when companies divest of nuclear, they're also divesting of the fossil fuel industry as well. The two definitely go hand in hand. So both of them are working, and certainly it's looking at both in terms of pension funds, in terms of banks, and then, as you say, Meta, you can do it personally. And personally, you can do it overnight. You can just get your mutual funds to either be a fossil fuel free mutual fund, or if you can tell your mutual fund not to invest in the petroleum-based industries or nuclear industries. So, but certainly to my knowledge, our government is giving tremendous subsidies to the fossil fuel industry right now. And that's the problem worldwide. And that's why the fossil fuels are not being discussed at COP26 per se.
Yeah, Meta, I stand corrected. It is 2050 that University of Toronto pledges to divest from fossil fuels. You were right.
Okay.
Well, and as far as the government investing, Canadian government so much in fossil fuels, I certainly agree it's been a problem. But Richard and others, what hope do you see for the new cabinet that's been announced? There's a great deal of interest and I think hope being expressed in the media at any rate on Stephen Guilbeault, who's been a very active environmentalist and with Greenpeace and other organizations in Quebec, now being the Minister of the Environment, and with Jonathan Wilkinson having been moved to Natural Resources. Do you see any potential there for a change in direction on the part of the government, or it's all speculation at this point, I suppose, on anyone's part?
I think it's certainly speculation. I mean, certainly I'm optimistic and hopeful that there will be a change. But again, you just look what has happened on Friday with our government appealing the Indigenous funding of Indigenous children in the school system. Cindy Blackstock has won about 7 appeals up the ladder, and it was hopeful that the government would finally come to its senses and start putting federal money into Indigenous schools to bring them up to par with the public schools of the various provinces. But now they're repealing that. So it just boggles my mind that on the one hand, Justin brings in a day for for reconciliation, but then he takes off on a vacation to Tofino, and now is appealing the most recent decision against the government. Boggles my mind. So I'm optimistic, Rose, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and we'll have to see.
Well, now, sorry, my impression is that the main kind of subsidies that are being provided to the fossil fuel industry are the pipelines. Is that not the truth? And once you have a contract for the pipelines, I don't see that they're going to take that back. They're not going to, rescind or refuse to carry through with that transnet. The whole bunch of pipelines at issue.
Also, a lot of those subsidies are directed toward the remediation of those orphan oil wells. So, in fact, the NDP were criticized somewhat during the last federal election for not being more specific about how these particular subsidies were being used, because I think some of the environmental groups regard the attention being given to the orphan oil wells is an important one, especially when there's some potential for converting them to geothermal forms of heating.
I have a thought, I think, and I hope that the business of the Liberal government having that lawsuit about the distribution of money to the disadvantaged children, the hope is that that just hasn't been explained well, because I think that I heard a year or two ago that they wanted to create a whole project of proportionately giving the appropriate help, not just a lump sum of money, but a whole system analogous to creating the child care across the country, rather than just giving money so people could try their luck. So analogous to that they want to and have in their back pocket a system to rather than $40,000 per child distributed blank, but to use that equivalent money or even more to create a system that is managing the whole problem in its various components appropriately. That's my thought and hope that I heard, and that they just haven't explained it well.
But we're talking about the government now, the new government.
Yes, yes. The Liberal government in that suit, that they, rather than this rigid thing, they want to bring in an appropriate system to cure the whole problem. Another aspect, I think, concerning the Canadian outlook now for counteracting climate change with the new ministers and so on, to get educated on that, I'd suggest if we could simply Google Liberal Platform 2021, because if you do this, it comes up with their platform of the recent election, and it goes after a few summaries of the different aspects of what the government's platform was. It's followed by about a 60 or 70 page detailed platform covering all of its various areas. And chapter 5, if you simply, again, Google Liberal Platform 2021 and you scroll way down to page 40, remember page 40, that is the beginning of chapter 5, which is about climate change. And on page 40 is a list of about 20 or more aspects of climate to deal with climate change that have already been put in place. And on the next 10 pages, there's about 10 pages. The next 10 pages, there is details about all of their other plans. So what I'd suggest to really everybody is to go and look at that in detail and then think which things you would want to change or new things you would want to add, but in particular, which things you'd like to accelerate. And there are things in there, for instance, about shifting all of the subsidies from fossil fuels to the renewable energy. It's there. I would think that's a thing we all want to accelerate, like doing a year, not 10, and that kind of thing. And by the way, on page 44 is they're dealing with one very important aspect, and that is the just or fair, the just transition. So that's outlined. So I would, to have an educated overall view of it, to get educated on actually what their plans are, read that, and then get after them through your MPs or whatever other means there are, whatever we're doing. But look at that, and then how does it need to be modified, sped up, altered, improved?
Now, you mentioned this document. Tell us again what document you're referring to that we should all have a look at.
It was the detailed platform for the last election of the Liberal Party, and it's still up. And the what we're also looking for, and I don't know if they've come out yet, but they will any day now, the so-called mandate letters to each member of parliament. And of course, the 2 mandate letters to our new Minister of the Environment and Climate Change and are transferred to the other important portfolio on that, Wilkinson. Those 2 look at their mandate letters. And in the mandate letters, as I read them in the past, the first half of most mandate letters to most members of the cabinet each time is generalizations about how they should work with their civil service, deputy minister and their whole that sort of thing. But the last half usually has anywhere from 5 to 20 bulleted list of things in their mandate that he wants them to do and report back on during the current, which now would be 4 years. So if you look at that detail.
Is that in this same document? Or
no,
this mandate is later, is separate.
These mandate letters, every new government sends out, the prime minister sends out mandate letter to each member of the cabinet. And it's very easy to find. Again, Google Canadian 2021 mandate letters or prime minister mandate letters, words to that effect. They'll come up. You can look at them, they'll list them, you can read them as soon as they come out. So read those mandate letters to do with climate change, those particular 2 out of the 36 or so cabinet ministers he's sending out mandate letters to, but those 2 particular mandate letters, and then chapter 5, page 40 to 51 of the Liberal Platform 2021. And I think there by this you'll know what they're planning to do, and then you can enter into, and in your next month from now, maybe have part to discuss these in detail. Having read these things, what are our ideas we want done?
Sounds good. Sounds very interesting. I didn't know about those mandate letters, and I have to take a look at them. Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you for everybody for being here. It's time for us to say goodbye, but come back next month. It's always the last Sunday in the month from 2 to 4 in Toronto time. And in the meantime, go look at our website. The thing is meant for you. We want you to discuss things there. So treat those comments columns as the way you would treat a listserv. Back in the day when everybody did things just by internet, or rather email listservs, we did a lot more discussing than I think we're doing today. So let's get back onto it. We've had a good conversation today, and I appreciate it very much. So thank you all for showing up, and I'll see you next month.
Okay? Oh, could I interject one thing?
Very quickly.